Hi everybody, my name is Elizabeth and welcome to Women of History. A little bit about myself since this is a new channel for me. I graduated last year with a master's degree in history, and I have an amazing passion for both women in history as well as British history. British history is my thing. From the time of the Roman occupation around 43 AD up until a little bit after the Tudors time. I'm starting to get more into Victorian era as well, with different literary works that really started intriguing me. So I may push back my timeline that I sort of like to focus in on with my British history. I live out in a farm. You'll see you'll see my little beagle back there walking around. She's enjoying the outside. Her name's Molly. But I wanted to do something that could really combine my love of women in history as well as be something that I could share with you all. So I figured a really good opportunity would be for me to read different both historical fiction as well as nonfiction biographies about different important and lesser known important women of history, and sort of share it with you guys and give you my feedback on what might be some good resources, some good books to read. And like I said, I'm not going to keep it to just nonfiction. I think that there's a lot of value in historical fiction as well. I love historical fiction. It's actually what set me on my path to getting my master's in history. I started with a Philippa Gregory book, The Constant Princess, which was about Catherine of Aragon, who went on to be the first wife of Henry VIII. And I was so enraptured by that book that it just gave me this love of British history. Even though Catherine of Aragon was from Spain, and a cool little tidbit, her parents were Ferdinand and Isabella, and most of us know Ferdinand and Isabella as the ones who financed Christopher Columbus, who went on to discover the New World, or discover the New World. But I was so intrigued by knowing that Henry VIII was married to Isabella and Ferdinand's daughter, and all of the stuff that went on with her life, that it just was like, it was suddenly my eyes opened up to history, and I just needed more. And she was the first person who really inspired me to love not only British history, but to love learning more about women in history, because women are so under talked about in so much of past history. You take Roman time, there were so many hugely significant women in that period, but the only reasons many of them were talked about were in terms of how they related to the men of that time. So a lot of their stories are very like snippets of their story based on how they interacted, or how they propelled, or how they stopped the men of that time, and then the rest of their stories were sort of lost. And I'm just really fascinated by these really influential women that were, like I said, very under talked about, despite their roles being quite significant. So I wanted to sort of share what I wanted to have upcoming for you guys. I have two Cleopatra, and I know this sounds cliche to start a woman in history by talking about Cleopatra, but I have two Cleopatra biographies that I want to read and sort of share with you guys what I find. I have one by Michael Grant. Michael Grant is an amazing historian. I have a bunch of other of his. And then I have the book Cleopatra by Dwayne Roller, who is a professor at the Ohio State University. Both Roller and Grant are both have taught at the university level at some prestigious schools. So I'm curious to see what they both do in discussing Cleopatra. And like I said, to most of us, speaking about Cleopatra is sort of cliche. She's such a pivotal, important person in history, and a lot of people just, when they think of some of the most famous women of all time, they think of Cleopatra. But what I really love about learning about women in history and history in general is like those little details that sort of connect threads along historical lines. So for example, what I find very cool is that the first Ptolemy, so Cleopatra was descended from the Ptolemy line, and Ptolemies were actually from Greece. So the first Ptolemy who went to Egypt was actually one of the Diadochi, or successors of Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great, died pretty young, and when he died, he had this massive empire, and then it was like the true Game of Thrones. Seriously, the true Game of Thrones after Alexander the Great died, because you had all these, they were called the successors or the Diadochi, that were spread all over Alexander's empire that wanted to rule. And when I talk about alliances and backstabbing, it was so real in that time. And the first Ptolemy went to Egypt at that time, and he was the one who was going to oversee Egypt and that part of Alexander's empire after Alexander passed away, or after Alexander died. So what's really sort of cool is that Cleopatra was sort of descended from this line of a successor of Alexander the Great. Like this connect of dots, the 6 degrees of separation that history has throughout it. That's the stuff that fascinates me. That's the stuff I find super intriguing, how it all weaves together. And the stories, when you're reading about something in British history from, let's say, the Viking Age, somehow, some way, it ends up linking down to the history of when the Romans ruled. It's all interlinked, and that's the stuff I love finding out. History to me is like this big puzzle, and you get little pieces through the characters, through the places they're going, and suddenly, the more pieces you get, suddenly you have this amazing picture in front of you. It's incredible. So that's what I want to do with Women of History. I want to bring you guys information that I think you might find fascinating. I want to bring you different authors that you may want to read, that you haven't heard about, or that maybe you've seen and you're not sure if you should pick it up. And I want to be able to share my take on the subject we're talking about. So I hope you'll subscribe, tune in for our channel, comment below if there's anything you want to discuss, check out, have me research, let me know. I'm super excited to bring this channel to you guys. Once again, my name's Elizabeth with Women of History. Love you.